Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Today, we are going to talk about protecting your organization from email privacy loss. As you will see, loss is a clever acronym to be revealed later. But the gist of it is we're going to talk about Spymail, otherwise known as email web bugs or simply just email tracking. So my name is Chad Gilles. I work in both product and legal roles at Mail Control. As I'm sure you gathered from the nature of this webinar, we are an email security and services provider. We are based in Chicago. Before coming to Mail Control, I spent 9 years prosecuting patents with a Chicago-based firm, McAndrews, Held and Malloy. I got my JD from Chicago, Kent. Prior to that, I spent 3 years as an electrical engineer. I have bachelor's and master's degrees in electrical engineering from Arizona State University. Okay, so that's a bit about me. Let's talk about why are we here? Why do legal teams care about Spymail? Why should you listen to me for the next 20 minutes or so? Well, the overarching problem is that Spymail is leaking sensitive and confidential information about us and our clients. Law firms and legal departments are in possession of as much, if not more, sensitive information than any other business unit or any other type of company. Right? And on top of that, we have ethical obligations to protect that information. So this is why at Mail Control, we are finding that attorneys, probably more than any other professions, are coming to us with concerns about Spymail and its ability to leak confidential and privileged information. So hopefully we'll give you some tips on how to reduce that. So as with any other cybersecurity or online threat, right, it's all about staying informed of new threats, keeping ahead of the game. So those of you who are on this webinar, you're ahead of the pack. This is a pretty cutting edge, new emerging problem. As you'll see later, the growth in the use of these Spymail tools is just skyrocketing very recently over the last 2 or 3 years. So thanks for joining. Your companies are in good hands. Okay, so to understand the consequences of this problem, this data leakage, let's first quickly go over, make sure we understand what is Spymail at a high level and what information is it leaking. So here's that clever acronym I alluded to, LOSS. So Spymail leads to privacy loss, and what that means is when your users are opening email, they're revealing their location. They're revealing when they open it, if, when, and how often they are opening those emails. They're also revealing system information. So it's revealing what devices are they using, what operating system and browser configurations. And then it's also revealing subsequent communications, where and when they are forwarding emails, and also on the other end, where and when other people are forwarding emails into your users. So that in a nutshell is the big problem, right? It's Spymail is leaking this information. What can we do about it, and what does this mean? So here, it's a little bit small, but I'm going to share these slides after the presentation, and you can visit the link if you want to see this. But this is a screenshot from one of these actual tools. It's actually one of the early ones of these tools. That's a product called Read Notify. And this is just a sample report of what someone sending a Spymail gives. And you'll see at the beginning up here, it's the information about the first time that email was opened, when it was opened, the location of which it was opened, the device and browser from which it was opened. Right? Then you see they break it out. Well, look, okay, this email was also opened on another computer. And again, same information for that one. And then it says, oh, look, this one was opened again on the first computer or device. Right? So this information, looking at the timestamps of those, cross-referencing those IP addresses with publicly available information, geolocation databases, allows them to get a very good understanding of what's going on with this email, who's opening it, where's it being forwarded. And it's just a lot of information that most people are totally unaware of that's being leaked. And so how does this work? It's technology that's actually been around for a while, for over a decade, but only recently is it so commercially available and so easy thanks to advances in cloud computing and web technologies. So the sender, someone using one of these tools, inserts a little invisible tracking code inside the email that sends you. Conventionally and historically, this has been a one by one invisible image, a tracking pixel is what people often call it, or like I said, they call it a web bug and various things. So it's the same technology that's used to track you across the internet, right? To set cookies and to see what websites you're visiting. But browsers are equipped, like they can protect you from those. No one is thinking about this in the context of email. No one is doing anything about these tracking pixels in email. And not only that, it's now advancing. It's not always just little invisible one by one tracking pixels. We're seeing some other techniques in the wild, and our research has also uncovered some other methods that do work against Outlook and Gmail. And so we're staying ahead of the evolution of these things. And so just to be clear, right, Spymail is not only spam and marketing emails. Surely a lot of spam and marketing emails contain this tracking code, but it's not only, and it's not just a virus, and it's not a malware, right? It doesn't show up as an attachment. It doesn't show up as anything suspicious in an email. And a lot of times these are legitimate emails that your users want to receive, right? It might be an email from a client or a potential client or a vendor. Everybody's using these things now. And so a lot of times these are emails you want to receive, and that's why firewalls and spam filters are not rejecting them. But you just don't want to give up the information when you open that. You don't want to be leaking information when you open those emails. And, again, just to be clear, a Spymail is not a read receipt. Like I'm sure many are familiar with in Outlook and Exchange. Read receipts are disclosed, and they give the recipient, they're permission-based. You can choose whether or not you're going to send a read receipt. Spymail is not disclosed. It's hidden. The vast majority of people we talk to have no idea it's there, and there's no methods to opt out. And so, as I mentioned, the usage of these things is just taking off. Here's one study. This company actually is a tracking provider, so they're actually touting these stats as good things, that the use is just skyrocketing and that millions of people are using these tools. But for those of us that understand the legal implications and the cybersecurity implications, it's not so much a good thing, right? We're not just worried about peddling our latest software. We're worried about protecting our users and our clients. And so here, this is actually, we have a tool where we can scan existing email in your Outlook. And so this is a scan we ran just yesterday. And this is pretty much the typical result that we'll see. A whole bunch of nothing until, the last couple of years, and then it just takes off. And so that's when we really started looking into building this product, is when we started knowing this stuff was just taking off, and it's everywhere now. Okay, so that's what Spymail is. That's the trend, and the information's leaking. So what does this mean? What risk does this put us at? What are the consequences? And there's really three big categories of consequences as I break them down. So the first would be employee and client privacy and safety. The second would be phishing, making yourself more vulnerable to phishing and cyber attacks. And the third is there's just a myriad of legal pitfalls and disadvantages. So that third point is really a lot of times specifically targeted at legal audiences. This is why legal audiences are the most common ones seeking us out. But the first two are generally applicable. Okay, so the first one, privacy and safety of your clients and employees. So as we've talked about, right, this Spymail can reveal the location of where your email users are. This means it can reveal the location of your attorneys, your firm's clients via forward, your staff members. And this information is revealed in real time, right? When the time between them opening in one of these emails and the sender getting a notification is seconds. And then it also aggregates it over time. These tools have very advanced dashboards. So now you start to see patterns, right? You see certain user always opens emails from this location at this time and this location at this time. And it's like, oh, okay, well, he probably lives here. He probably works here. Oh, well, now he's somewhere else. He's probably on vacation or on business travel. And so it's a privacy and safety concern. It's also a cybersecurity concern, as we'll talk more about. But then this is just sort of a little anecdote. It's more funny than scary because nothing happened, but it does drive the point home that someone used this exact technique to track Jay-Z across the world while he was on world tour. Okay, then the second risk is phishing and cyber attacks, something that everybody is nonstop talking about these days. And granted, Spymail is not ransomware, right? But it does contribute and does aid these other more popular attacks, the ones that are getting more press coverage, right? So again, we've talked about how it leaks physical location, it leaks email security vulnerabilities. So it's telling these senders which clients, which browsers, which configurations the devices are on, email interests and weak links. So they're knowing which email addresses are active, that are getting checked, which users are opening which emails, right? So they're sort of casing the joint. They're checking out your organization, what emails are most likely to get opened, what emails are most likely to bounce, that sort of thing, right? So all this information is helpful in then formulating a successful phishing attack, right? Whether it be a business email compromise where they're waiting for your executive to be out of the country and then they spoof an email from him, or whether they're sending fraudulent wire requests because they know who's always emailing your accounting, right? They figure out who your accounting provider is. They know who's emailing that and when you're emailing your accounting provider, and they use that information to time and craft a phishing email. And so the consequences of phishing and hacking are clear. I don't think we need to belabor this point, right? We all heard about the Panama Papers when Mossack Fonseca got hacked. Just last month, the hack of Cravath and Weil was back in the news. Information extracted there was used for insider trading to the tune of $4 million. And ultimately, what does this mean? This means malpractice lawsuits from clients. And it's now even leading to class action lawsuits. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about our recent class action lawsuit filed against one Chicago firm against another, on the grounds that the defendant was not using adequate cybersecurity measures. And then this quote is just one real world example. There was a hack in Ukraine which actually took down their power grid, and they traced it back to spear phishing emails, a spear phishing campaign that contained these tracking pixels, right? So the attackers were figuring out which emails were getting opened, where were they getting opened, that sort of thing. And then finally, sort of the big third catch-all group is legal pitfalls and disadvantages. So this slide is specifically talking about negotiations in general, right? Whether it's as part of a merger and acquisition, whether it's part of a litigation, any sort of adversarial situation where you're negotiating via email with another party. And the quote here is from a blog from an attorney at this firm listed there. And he was basically relaying the story of how someone was trying to tell him how great this technology is, right? Telling him that he should use this, right? That if the opposing party opens his settlement offer once and never opens it again, well, they're probably not really interested. But if 6 people open it 6 times each, okay, now the offer is getting serious consideration. Maybe that helps him plan his follow-up. Maybe it helps him decide whether or not what counter offer he should accept. So then taking to a more specific, right, pre-lawsuit or during litigation, Spymail is being admitted as evidence of email receipt and the time that it was opened. So this first case listed here, Fox v. Leland, an email tracking receipt was admitted as evidence of when one of the parties opened a particular email. Establishing the timeline was important there. And then Stewart v. Cuddle, that one, there was a default judgment entered against the defendant who was served via email. And the district court judge actually gave a lot of weight to the fact that they had this email tracking receipt that said that the email had been opened. And then over on the other side, right, it's not only that you opened an email, it may be that you now there's evidence of the content of that email. So one example would be like a patent troll, right? Let's say he's blasting out patent demand letters all over the world, right? He's saying, oh, we own patent such and such, we think you're infringing. And now he sees those opens coming back, and now he has evidence of who has knowledge of his patent. And so that's useful for proving willfulness, but it's also useful for identifying the defendants in the first place, right? The companies or potential defendants who open it a bunch of times and then forward it to their attorney, those are probably the ones he's going to put more effort into, right? He's going to follow up with them and maybe even file suit against them, as opposed to someone who just opens it once and then never opens it again. Maybe they weren't too concerned. So then continuing during lawsuits, pre-lawsuit and litigation. So again, we've talked about how Spymail can be used to identify the parties, the defendant's clients, right? They can use it to figure out which employees of yours they should depose, which third parties they should depose. And as one real world example, right, HP was using this to try and identify a journalist's confidential sources. So they were sending out spy mail to the suspected confidential sources, hoping that the sources would forward it to the journalist, and vice versa, sending it to the journalist, hoping it get forwarded to the sources. Another real world example here is, this is from a case, Pashman v. Aetna. This is out of the Northern District of California a few years back. And here, even before the lawsuit happened, so it was like an employer and an employee. The employer sent the employee a spy mail, which the employee then turned around and forwarded to an attorney. And so the employer got to see, like, oh, look, we know he got this email. We know he forwarded it. Oh, and look, we even know which law firm he forwarded it to. Okay, so, you know, maybe we should start preparing our defense, because this guy is obviously seeming litigious. So that's just one example of all this great information that can be gained without the other party having any idea. Okay, so finally, in the big bucket of legal pitfalls and disadvantages, as legal practitioners, law firms, legal departments, we have ethical obligations, right? And two rules here that are implicated by spy mail is Rule 1.1, which is competence. This is a relatively new rule. It's been adopted here in Illinois since about 2012, but it's continuing to be adopted in more and more jurisdictions. I think the last count I saw was like 26 jurisdictions had adopted it. And basically what it says is attorneys have an ethical obligation to be technologically competent. They need to, you know, have some basic level of understanding of the technologies they're using and the risks associated with those technologies. And then the other rule, 1.6 here, is confidentiality of information. There's been some changes requiring attorneys to take reasonable measures to protect confidential information, especially in light of new technologies that they are using. And so far, there's not a whole lot of guidance on spy mail, right? There's basically two formal opinions, one from New York and one from Alaska. Here you're seeing the one from New York. This was all the way back in 2001, back when spy mail was really sort of a niche thing, only in the hands of, you know, big technological giants like HP, for example. It was not something that could be easily achieved by me going into my Gmail and installing a plugin. So back then, the New York Bar Association decided, hey, lawyers may not ethically use technology to surreptitiously examine and trace email and other electronic documents. So, you know, at face value, that seems like, okay, great. New York attorneys, you can't use spy mail. And it's, as far as I know, it's still a valid opinion in New York, but there are some questionable things about it. So first of all, the opinion predates those changes to Rule 1.1 that require technological competence, and that whole movement that's going on of requiring technological competence, and same as comment 18, right? And so the weight of this opinion, as far as other jurisdictions are concerned, is probably going to be in question, because this is just, there's a lot of courts, a lot of ethics bodies are deciding it's better to put the burden on the recipients, the people who are better, don't just rely on others to adhere to these things, right? Take measures, protect yourself. And the common reference is metadata scrubbing. I'm sure many of you have implemented metadata scrubbing tools in your environments. Way back in 2001, everyone was saying, oh no, you don't have to scrub metadata. No, they're not allowed to send it. And then shortly after this, the ABA changed their stance, and they said, you know what, it's not very effective to just rely on people to not inspect it. You should take measures to scrub it yourself. And so a lot of jurisdictions are now taking that approach. And so those jurisdictions are not likely to agree with New York that, oh, no worries, no, don't have to worry about spy mail. People just shouldn't use it. So just 2001, silence, crickets, until 2016. Finally, the amount of spy mail has gotten so prevalent that another bar association finally had to weigh in. In Alaska, the sort of one-sentence conclusion was, the use of a tracking device that provides information about the use of documents, aside from their receipt and having been read by opposing counsel, is a violation of some rules, and including confidentiality. So here it's interesting, right? It seems to say, oh, you can't use these, but it also explicitly allows using spy mail for simple read receipt. So again, it's not like a clear black and white rule. There's some gray area. And again, the opinion later goes on to say, oh no, there's no affirmative duty to protect against spy mail. But that's really being called into question by some other commenters and some other jurisdictions, although they haven't issued formal guidance yet. What they're saying is, look, many jurisdictions have said you have a duty to protect against metadata, right? You have to scrub it yourself. You can't rely on others to just not look at it. And they're saying the same thing should be here, right? You shouldn't just rely on people to not send you spy mail. You should do what you can to protect against it. At a minimum, like make sure your users are aware of it, that sort of thing. Right? And here's some of those commenters. So Michael Kennedy is the Vermont Bar Council, and he posted a blog post that Alaska's opinion that there's no duty to guard against web bugs is the exact opposite of what they're telling their lawyers in Vermont with respect to metadata and track changes. In other words, in Vermont, they're saying, hey, it's on you to scrub that metadata and those track changes before it goes out. And so if you think about it, Spymail is really just metadata for your email. So existing metadata scrubbers are scrubbing your attachments. It makes sense to now scrub your emails. And then one other piece of informal guidance came out of Wisconsin. This was an interesting one because Wisconsin basically says, well, yeah, our rules are very similar to Alaska, but we have this peculiar rule, and as far as I know, no other jurisdiction has this rule, where it says, oh, lawyers are allowed to engage in a little bit of deceitful activity as long as it's part of a lawful investigation. So there, the Wisconsin Bar Council is like, I don't know, seems like Spymail might be okay if it's part of a lawful investigation. So again, there's no consistent rule. There's no black and white rule. People would be well advised to just take measures to protect themselves. And so how do you do that, right? So, well, a sort of simple and not totally effective solution, but it's a start, is to just set all your users, tell all your users, their email clients, don't download images, right? Don't load external content. In Outlook, it's just don't download images. In Gmail, it's basically the same. I think it just says like, do you want to download these images? So just tell them, set it to default, no downloading images. Don't ever click that little thing. Oh yeah, safe sender, right? But the problem with that is, right now you're managing every single browser, every single client device that they're using. And it's very hard to not click that download images when it's an email that you can't read because it's a bunch of images in there, right? Or you're wondering, oh, I wonder what this image is. So anytime your users are now clicking that or adding them to a safe sender, well, guess what? Now Spymail from that sender is tracking that user. And again, it's not only marketers, it's not only people you don't know. We're seeing attorneys tracking attorneys, attorneys tracking clients, clients tracking attorneys. I mean, we're seeing it all. And so this is something that anyone can do, assuming you're using the right email client. Outlook for the desktop does have this setting where you just say do not load images by default. Gmail has this setting. Native Mail for Android and native iOS Mail all have that setting. Interestingly, the Outlook web app, Outlook Online, and the Outlook mobile app do not have an explicit setting for this. And they just rely on Outlook just decides for you. You know, they run some heuristics and they decide whether or not they're going to load images from that sender. So if you're going to adopt this, sort of quick and dirty approach, don't use Outlook Online and don't use Outlook mobile app would be the recommendation there. Now, if you want a more complete solution, a centrally managed solution, a client-agnostic solution, how's that for a big lead up? Yeah, adopt MailControl's Enterprise Privacy Shield, right? So we work on the back end, we work at the email server, and we nip it all in the bud, right? So the email comes in, we scan it before it goes out to mailboxes, right? We scan it there at the point of ingress. If we detect any tracking code, we strip that out, and then we deliver the email to the mailboxes. So the result is that users are getting untracked emails that they can view their images in, right? So their emails, we're not breaking their emails, we're not blocking their emails. They are getting a sanitized version of that email. And then on top of that, we're also providing reporting, right? So we're letting the admins and the users know who's trying to track their users. And so then we're using that information about what spy mail we detect to update our algorithms and our signatures, and so moving forward, right, future-proof. So here is a screenshot of our dashboard. It's pretty simple. It tells you, which emails came in, we're spying, and then it breaks them out for you. It tells you, okay, this email from this sender, this recipient was tracked. It was using this tool. And that can be very useful, right? It can be very useful to know if an opposing counsel is tracking one of your attorneys, or a potential client is tracking you, right? And so we have two deployment options. We have a cloud deployment option and on-premises. The cloud supports Exchange Online /O365. It also supports Google Apps for Work, which is now called G Suite. And the cloud deployment, we also can do a cloud deployment with Exchange on-premises 2013 and 2016. We can't do a cloud deployment with Exchange 2010. The cloud deployment, we use Amazon. That's a common question. And then it's a 5-minute installation. It's a single PowerShell script that takes like less than 5 minutes to run. So super quick and easy. And then for the on-premises version, we support Exchange 2010, 2013, and 2016. It consists of an Exchange plugin, or Microsoft calls that like a custom transport agent. That installs onto your Exchange server via a little installation and GUI that we provide. And then that talks to a virtual appliance that we provide. The virtual appliance, typically, most often it's a VMware image, and then it supports high availability right out of the box. And so the on-premises version is really, it's for the on-premises customers, so they tend to be more privacy sensitive. And so one benefit of the on-premises is that the emails are never leaving your data center. We're doing it all on-premises, and all we're doing up to our cloud is just the dashboard reporting. So that's it, right? So some of the benefits of our EPS is that it's invisible to your end users. There's nothing to install on your users' client devices. There's no instructions they need. They don't need to behave. They continue to read their email and send their email exactly how they always have, using whatever client they want, and they're protected. It's all centrally managed, so it's either via the Exchange admin center, if you're using O365 or Exchange 2013 or 2016. And then for on-premises, we provide a little management GUI. It's very simple, not much to it. And so, as I said, we're always using the data the Spymail that we catch to improve and update our algorithms. And so we believe it's future-proof. So that's it. Just a few more notes here. In March, we are going to be sponsoring and have a booth at the ABA Tech Show in Chicago. So it would be great if everyone wanted to come stop by. If you want to just learn more about Spymail, we have a bunch of articles, both from us internally and from outside sources at our knowledge base, which you can find at that link there. And finally, if you want to try out mail control, give us a call, shoot us an email, visit our website. We do offer, no risk free trials. And finally, after this webinar is completed, which I'm going to open it up to Q&A right now. If you the Q&A feature of Zoom, you can submit me some questions. I'll sit here and answer those. And then afterwards, we're going to send out an email. We're going to include the link to these slides. We're going to include a link to the recording of this webinar if you want to, if someone couldn't make it and you want to share that with them. And then we're also going to include a link to a survey. I know how much everyone loves surveys, so to sort of sweeten the deal, we are offering $10 Amazon gift cards to anyone who actually completes that survey. So look for that email, and for now, I'll just turn it over to Q&A, and thanks everybody for listening. Okay, so the first question I have here is how easy is it for someone to send a spy mail? Yeah, sorry if I wasn't more clear on that. So it's insanely easy. There's dozens of these tools, just to name a few. I mean, obviously there's the big marketing tools like Salesforce and HubSpot. Those are the ones used by the professional marketing and sales agencies. But for individuals, there's Banana Tag, Streak, Yesware. I mean, Read Notify, Mail Track, Get Notify, Vocus.io. I could go on and on. And a lot of these are just simple Outlook and or Gmail add-ins. You go to their website, you give them your username and password, sign up for a free trial, add the extension to your Chrome browser, and you're off and running. So, I mean, literally 5 minutes. And then they're collecting all this data on you and your users. Okay, next question. Does location tracking work if I'm checking my email on my cell phone? Yeah, so if you're connected to your, if you're on cellular data, right there, if you're on cellular data to a base station, the IPS is basically going to locate you to within whatever the coverage area of that base station. If, however, you're indoors and you're connected to a Wi-Fi network, your location can now be much more accurately pinned down. Next question. What type of information are you reporting to the dashboard when you identify an email as tracked? So I guess I can go back to the dashboard for that one, if it will let me. All right, so as you can see here, we're just the basics, right? So sender, recipient, and subject. Basically enough information to help you find that email and help you assess what was the risk of that email being tracked. Um, so we're not trying to collect a bunch of information on you and data on you, right? We're really just trying to enable you to say, okay, was this email a risk? Then we also provide the tool that they are using, and that also can be very useful in assessing the risk of it. So if, for example, in this screenshot, you can see, right, LinkedIn built their own email tracking system, right? So chances are if you got a LinkedIn one, most likely it's actually LinkedIn. It's not some spoofed email, and it's probably pretty low risk. Another one here, mailtrack.io. That's one of the scarier ones because it's just a simple little extension, right? Anybody can sign up for it from any email address, free trial. So if you don't know who the sender or the subject is, the tool that they're using can be useful in assessing the risk of a particular spy mail. So that's what we'll report. We keep it simple. Future features, we've had some customers request whether the email originated from out of the country and things like that. So we'll probably work to refine that and maybe update that at some point. But ultimately, it's really just about helping you find which emails were being tracked, and so you can assess that risk. The next question is activation per device or per email address. It is per email address. So for both on-premises and cloud, um, you can either sign up for coverage for your whole organization, or you can cover a group of addresses, and we do that right through your Active Directory groups. So you set up you set up like a mail control security group in your Exchange admin center, and then we just protect those group of users. So some bigger organizations where they've got a lot of maybe a lot of lower level factory workers or field workers, they don't want to protect all 5,000 employees. They might just want to protect 100 managers or executives. So that's supported, and it's part of the installation process where you can define a group and you can update that group as you wish, and then we'll just only charge for the users that are using it. So actually, it looks like I just answered the next question. Can I set up a test group for a minority of user emails? The answer is yes. And actually, to elaborate on that, so as part of a free trial, usually what will happen is a customer will either just, the IT group will nominate themselves to be the test group, or they can just set up a total, development account, email account, sign it up for some mailing lists or whatever, or forward some emails to it. And that's how they test out the system initially. The next the next question is, can these email tracking tools bypass our protection? So not without your permission, right? But we do. This does lead to one other question we often get is, can we whitelist certain senders or certain domains? And specifically, a lot of times companies are using GoFish or KnowBe4. These are companies who send test phishing emails into your company, right? As part of a training program for your employees. And yes, in your dashboard as an admin, you can type in any users or domains that you want to whitelist and allow the tracking through. And similarly, a lot of companies want to be able to track internally. So it's very easily to configure this to only remove tracking from emails that are originating outside of your company. Time for a couple more. Let me see what other. Okay, so here's one for on-premises. What information is being sent to your server? So for the on-premises, the only information that's being sent to our server is what's in your dashboard. So the emails stay entirely within your own data center, which again is why more secure companies, a lot of the bigger law firms and things that can support and afford on-premises Exchange servers, they opt for that approach. Okay, so the other remaining questions are generally about licensing and pricing, and we will include some information about that in the email that we send out. So with that, I am going to, if no more questions, I'm going to sign off. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. And as I said, look for that email from us, and please fill out the survey. It would be much appreciated. And in exchange, you'll get the $10 Amazon gift card. Thanks a lot.